In telling the stories of Washington State, we have gotten to know many inspiring and, of course, many aspiring athletes. Para-Nordic skier Erin Martin is one of those athletes that we've profiled in the past. Erin was an active outdoor enthusiast when she was paralyzed in a rock climbing accident back in 2013. Since then, Erin has evolved into a competitive biathlete, a para-Nordic skier, competing in events all across the globe, earning her first Paralympics appearance at the 2022 Beijing Games. Please join me in welcoming Erin Martin. Erin, welcome.
Thank you. It's
so good to have you. We talked a little bit before the breakfast started, and so excited to have you here with us. First of all, tell us just about para-Nordic skiing, how you even got into the sport.
Yeah, okay. So Nordic skiing is more commonly known as cross-country skiing. So human-propelled sport, highly aerobic, requires lots of power. It's a challenging sport. And para-Nordic includes both cross-country skiing and biathlon. And biathlon is a combination of cross-country skiing and target shooting in the same race. Para-Nordic, just to give you a brief understanding of kind of what the sport itself looks like, there's 3 classifications of within the sport of para-Nordic. There's visually impaired athletes, there's standing athletes, and then there's sit skiers. I am a sit skier, so I sit in what's called a bucket that is attached to a frame and then attached to cross-country skis. And I propel myself using the ski poles. And my level of injury, I have a spinal cord injury, and my level of injury is from the chest down. So I have, so basically it's just my upper body and my back that I use to propel myself over up hills, downhills into corners, all sorts of exciting and variable terrain. So I think an important part of my story of how I got into para-Nordic skiing is just to tell you a little bit about who I was before I had my injury. I think, like you mentioned, very active. Being outdoors and being active outside was a really big part of who I was and how my friend group and how I dealt with stress and had a sense of personal accomplishment. And after my injury, a lot of the same outdoor sports that I did before just I didn't have access to. I mean, it's difficult to hike in a wheelchair. So not impossible, but difficult. And so I was really, with that sort of big gap in my life, I was looking for a way to fill it. And my first para sport I tried was para rowing, which was really gave me my first kind of taste of competition. And I got exposed to that really intense high output cardio. And shortly after I guess maybe a year or two after I started para rowing, then I got introduced to para-Nordic skiing, and just immediately was so excited about the sense of adventure, exploring trails. It was something I could do independently. I mean, with rowing, there's like a 60-pound boat you have to get in and out of the water, whereas with skiing, I can just go on my own. As well as the thrill and the adrenaline and the potential for competition suited my level of disability and my kind of unique body better.
So how is it that you became an international competitor? Was that something that was always a goal for you, to compete on a global stage?
No, definitely
How
not.
did that happen?
Yeah, so, I think before my injury, I was very much a recreational athlete. I enjoyed just doing it when I wanted and doing it for the sake of being outside. I also wasn't really ready for the commitment and the discipline that it takes to be a professional athlete. After my injury, I think the process of developing into a competitive athlete helped me regain a sense of control and empowerment in my new body that was something I didn't get anywhere else, and really filled a gap in my life that I hadn't, it made me feel whole again.
Was there a moment or something that happened specifically
Yeah.
that was the game changer for you, where you decided that was going to be your path? Did something happen?
Yeah. So I went to the first World Cup I ever competed in was in Finstrau, Germany. And the course was, as a Paranordic skier, the course was incredibly difficult. I think it actually was a biathlon race. And it was, raining, snowing, sleeting, gusting wind.
Awful.
The most challenging course I've ever been on. And at the end of the race, I had this feeling of kind of total exhaustion, but also this huge sense of accomplishment and like what a challenge I faced, and to overcome it and to think about being able to build on that experience was really highly motivating to me. I mean, after that, I was like, I gotta invest what I can in this to take it as far as I can.
Wow.
So.
And so what was it like when you were named to the 2022 Paralympic Nordic team, the ski team?
Yeah.
What was that like? How did that happen?
Yeah, well, I was by myself in North Central Washington, which is where I train in the winter. It was January, the games were in March of 2022, and the director, the Paranordic director, gave me a call, and she told me I was on the team and that I wasn't able to disclose it with anyone yet because it hadn't been officially announced. So I think I hung up the phone, and I just, didn't even know what to do with myself. I was so excited. I felt on the verge, like my head was gonna explode. I was just wanted to tell everyone I was so excited. But I think the other important piece of that, as I started my Paralympic journey, setting the goal to attend the Paralympics, at the time felt like a really big, scary, intimidating goal, and was really a stretch goal. I mean, the Paralympics were 3 years after I started skiing, and seeing that goal come to fruition was a really great learning opportunity for me to understand the power in setting really ambitious goals and how rewarding it can be. I mean, even if I hadn't qualified, the road that took me to that point was still incredibly valuable. But to see that achievement was just a huge sense of pride for me, and definitely made me realize how important it is to set those big goals.
Did it change your perspective of barriers and how to overcome them? We all have different types of barriers.
Yeah.
Certainly you do. Did it change your perspective of what you were able to do, what you can do, what you still might do in the future?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's such a big part of the athletic experience to push your body and set goals and achieve them. I mean, that's the whole point of all of it. And to go through that process and experience that was just such a powerful, and it instilled me with so much confidence. And I mean, after I went to the Paralympic Games, I came home and sort of felt like whatever life threw at me, I was like, you know what I just did was one of the most wild and intense experiences of my entire life, and I will be surprised if anything can compare to that. So made me feel equipped.
I love it. Love that. Beyond that, I can't imagine there's anything more powerful than that you would have taken away from that experience. But you met incredible people who are on similar journeys. Was there a takeaway from the 2022 Olympic experience for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I think about that Beijing Paralympic experience, it's really hard for me to separate the experience from all of the sort of turmoil that was going on at the time. I mean, it was the very end of the COVID pandemic, but restrictions were still very, very much a part of it. And leading up to the Paralympic Games, while we were all in China at the venue, Russia invaded Ukraine. And so to be in a world stage in that environment during that time was just, it was a reminder that no matter how much you prepare, there's always going to be things that affect your experience that are beyond your control. But I also always think about, when I think about that experience, I think about my teammate, Oksana Masters, who's just one of the most accomplished. She is the most accomplished U.S. Winter Paralympian of all time. She is incredible. And she was born in Ukraine and still feels significant connection to that. And I think that her experience at the Paralympic Games were just a little bit more emotionally charged with that. But one thing I know that she did, and it obviously worked out really well for her, was to channel her frustration and her sadness and her all of the negative emotions into her skiing and her performance, which I think is such a powerful tool to have, and has really, I think it's what makes her so great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. As of 2018, Paralympic medalists receive the same amount in prize winnings as Olympic medalists. Way overdue, but that happened in 2018. Was there a moment where you were sort of pleasantly surprised at the care and attention to make it sort of a seamless experience for Paralympic athletes?
Yeah, so the trip to China was a really big deal. Airplanes are not accessible. And so to take a 16-hour flight to China was a pretty onerous consideration. And the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee did an amazing job of making sure that the plane was accessible, the staff were prepared to work with people with disabilities. The food on the plane was specifically tailored for athletes, which is such an important part of the preparation and fueling for competition. I also think the Paralympic Games itself was accessible in a way that made competition for me more comfortable and was actually a little bit easier than I was expecting. I think the acknowledgement of, so in my experience, Paralympic athletes have an incredible level of dedication, commitment, and are elite athletes right along with their Olympic partners. In fact, Paralympic means alongside, and the Paralympic movement is considered to be alongside the Olympic. And so the reflection of the compensation for award is, I think, a really important acknowledgement of that.
I'm almost out of time, but I do, since our focus is on investment today, do you see opportunities for others? Where would those opportunities be for others to invest in parasport that would achieve sort of the maximum positive outcome?
As an aspiring Paralympic medalist, I am not I'm not quite at the highest level. I think there are really huge opportunities to fund aspiring athletes and Paralympians. We, either through sponsorships, especially through sponsorships. A lot of my teammates and other para-athletes that I know also have to work. I work as well to fund my Paralympic training and travel and competition. Sorry, thank you.
There we go. Great.
And so I think providing funding for aspiring athletes, and kind of along with that in terms of the sponsorship piece, I think is a sort of secondary effect of that would be more exposure and more visibility to para-athletes, and especially para-women. I think Paralympic men have had attention for a lot longer, and I think there's room to invest in and elevate the presence and the importance of Paralympic women. Overall, to me, the value of that for women, and especially for disabled women, it's important to have investment and opportunities where women can be valued for their strength, for their resilience, for their power. And to me, sport and para-sport is one of the very best ways to do that.
Fantastic. And we are going to leave it there because that is the perfect ending to a fantastic discussion. Erin Martin, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you
so much for being here and for sharing. We appreciate it.